Watch this video with our virtual reality glasses for smartphone. virtualvizor.com.
Obviously not for mass production, but it looks like it's going to happen. So, Michael, talk about Nvidia and how you guys are really contributing to the future of entertainment.
Okay, perfect. So Bo had better content and visuals than I'm going to have. I'm going to use my hands a little bit, but look at what he put up because that's kind of cool. So I think most folks know Nvidia as like a gaming company, and at the heart of VR kind of lives a gamer, I think, everywhere. And you know, how do you get that type of real content into a VR type environment? So Nvidia, we're sort of a platform company when it comes to virtual reality. We are hardware, as you know, but we're software as well. So the story kind of changes when we get into virtual reality. We're doing everything we can to build up the ecosystem, whether that's haptic devices, HMD companies, application providers. So we do SDKs that can help with rendering. We have technology that's called multi-ray shading and lens match shading. You know, VR requirements are so important and so high at a 90 frame per second rate that technology and compute performance really do matter. As I said, how many people are gamers? Anybody game in the audience? So interesting stat, if you're gaming at like an HD resolution, virtual reality is going to take that up. The necessity from a graphics standpoint is going to be taken up 7 times. So Nvidia, as a graphics company, we love those statistics. And we're trying to do whatever we can, again, from a software standpoint. We work with partners to help put the SDKs or software development kits into the engines. I think traditional pipelines in content creation, I think customers and our customers are trying to figure out how do they merge that pipeline into VR? Is it another pipeline, or is it somewhere in between, right? Technicolor can kind of test to that. It's kind of a blend, and I think they're still in the figuring it out days today. But again, from an Nvidia standpoint, whatever we can do to build the ecosystem from a software, hardware, and support standpoint, that's really what we're doing. Many engines are implementing technology today that we pushed out again to get that 90 frames per second rate up, lower the latency, because I think everybody has done virtual reality or done a few experiences in this room, and there are bad experiences and there are great experiences. And as we want this market to adopt the technology, we need great experiences, right? One and done is not going to grow VR. So we really need to do whatever we can as a technology company to enable the content creators to do as great an experience as possible so the adoption rate really, really increases heavily.
Hey, so this is not necessarily VR entertainment, but can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing with Tesla and sort of threatening the AR space?
Tesla Motors, if people are familiar with that, Elon Musk, dynamic leader there. We do have a great relationship with them, and this actually is a good tie into virtual reality, and let me get there, I'll eventually get there. I think virtual reality, and the whole artificial intelligence, that line is crossing, and as an example, if you're in a VR experience and you see some avatar or character and you tap them on the shoulder, the 4th time you tap them on the shoulder, push them on the shoulder, in the real world, they're going to react differently than the first time, because that's what a normal human being might do. So how do we know and how do we get content to figure out what a human being is going to figure out? You've got to take a lot of data in, kind of do that artificial intelligence work, which leads into deep learning. Okay, so artificial intelligence, large bucket, you then break it down to machine learning, then you break it down to deep learning. That's really where the parallel nature of a GPU comes in. What we're doing with Tesla is we have technology that, again, is based on a chip where we create a platform. It's called Drive PX, and recently Drive PX2 with an architecture change. What that does, it's the brains that lives inside the car. So with autonomous driving, you start to have as many camera points around the vehicle as possible, and it's collecting as much data as possible, but it needs to compute that. So it's doing radar, it's doing sonar, there's a lot of algorithms that are running in this technology, because it needs to interpolate what's happening. Is it a pedestrian? Is it a red light or a green light? And if you think about that, autonomous driving is sort of the grand challenge of compute, but where you can take that as a subset is, just like the car can maneuver around curvy roads, in an AR environment, I can start to do the same type of thing with that technology. I know that I'm going to be turning here, and I know that there's an object in front of me. So that Drive PX and the technology that we're working with Tesla on, and they're helping us with, it's only going to, again, push what the reality is and what the necessity is, I should say, of technology, and step that down to AR. And I don't mean step down from a compute standpoint, but a subset, right? Because autonomous driving is really, really difficult. But AR can use some of the things we're doing with Tesla in a personalization standpoint when somebody just has some type of headset or device in their hands.
Well, it's fascinating. So, Timothy, talk about what's going on in Technicolor.
Sure.
Technicolor Experience Center. How are you guys pushing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I mean, I think the audience is probably familiar with Technicolor. We've been around for about 100 years. We actually invented color. You can go back and look, but it's black and white before we were there. So that was about 105 years ago. And there's kind of a stark similarity between that epoch and what's happening today. I mean, we saw the beginnings of a very transformative medium in color. Technicolor worked with the creative community here in Los Angeles to build the 3-strip color process, which became basically the rudimentary canon of film and film development and filmmaking and film artistry and imagery. And that became one of the hallmarks of television and that medium. But we can look back to radio and TV and film, and there are basically the same threads that we see today in VR. So we have a stark new creative canvas for high-end creative images. We have an absolute a ton of technology coming through from all kinds of different providers. There is an incredible, I guess one thing that is new and different is the startup community in the space is incredibly vibrant, and we are heavily engaged in that discussion and kind of talking to the VR startup community both here in LA and in Silicon Valley and also in Asia. A tremendous amount of not just capital, but also very high-end creative content makers, technologists getting together to understand this new medium, which is fantastic. And then there's companies like Nvidia and Huawei and others who are investing significant amounts of their capital in corporate development money in providing tools, hardware, Nokia as well, of course, and techniques and know-how into the space. So we kind of sit a little bit here in the middle of that area, and we've made some fairly significant bets of our own in VR because we saw this coming about 3 or 4 years ago. We have a large R&I, Research and Innovation Center in France, where we saw a lot of the kind of the underpinnings of what is today, kind of almost a stitching algorithm or a rendering engine or whatever else that you can see is almost commonplace now, or will be. We saw the first inklings of that a few years ago. So we've made some fairly significant bets in the space, and we're going to make some more. But one of the things that you mentioned is the tech. I'll get to that in a second because I don't want to make this a big advertisement about what we're doing quite yet, although I appreciate it. We have kind of a narrative here on a thesis on VR. So our interest is to make this as my friend from Nvidia said, we believe this is going to be about high-end, and it's about the high-quality native content. There'll be a lot of content on YouTube, there'll be a lot of Facebook 360, that's great. That's another part of the market that we probably will play around in, but we're not going to focus on. We think that the creative imagery part of this, the LA audience here, is for high-end, native, high-quality content. And within that, there are kind of a few other buckets. We believe this is a social medium. That may sound really weird because you sit there with your goggles on in your head and you are isolated at some level. But if you play around with VR a lot, when this experience becomes real to you as a human being is when you're engaging with someone else or an AI that feels like someone else. And that's when you really get really immersed. I'm the worst father in the world. I have 4 young kids, and I've let them rock and roll on an HTC Vive for like the last 3 or 4 months in their playroom. And they love this thing. I'm probably going to get chastised by everybody for doing that, but they are totally into Job Simulator. But when they get into a role where they're actually doing some role-playing with an AI, such as Gnomes and Goblins, which is fantastic, by the way, they really get immersed. They really love it. And to them, it's like this kind of friend from another planet coming to visit them. It's kind of amazing to see. So when I see that happening, it's amazing. I think this is a highly disruptive technology. It's a great medium for us to be involved in. We're very excited about it. I'll be quiet now, and we can get to the sec later.
Sure. I have some follow-up questions in a second. I want to get to Randal. So Randal could not be more accredited as a traditional filmmaker, but now he's got a 360-degree series called Defrost. So Paul Weathers, Bruce Davison, Harry Hamlin, for the Sundance Film Festival and Cannes Film Festival in 2016. Or it's going. Cannes Film Festival having it?
It's having January, yeah.
Maybe comes this week.
It was at the last conference.
Last
yeah.
time.
Okay.
This year.
So tell us about like why you're doing this and how you're telling stories in this medium and how it differs from your previous experience.
Well, about 3 years ago, my brother, who is a visual effects supervisor, he always keeps me up to date on all the creative new things in technology. He showed me the Oculus Rift, and I saw the Tuscan Village demo. Anybody see that? Where you walk around the Tuscan Village in 3D, and you go upstairs and look off the side, and it really looks like you're there. And I thought, wow, how do you adapt this to narrative and actors? Because it felt so real. I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if you could actually see actors in front of you and feel like they're there? I had written a script when I was in college about a woman who's frozen and brought back to life, and I thought this is the perfect material for this because the technology is such that when you're wearing the goggles, you can't talk, you can't move, and what better way to do it than make the viewer the character? And so we shot as an experimental 5-minute show with this script, and I got friends to show up. Carl Weathers, like you said, and Bruce Davison and Chris Atkins all helped because they're friends. And we shot this in one take, and with GoPros, and it turned out really well. We took it to Sundance, and then we decided to expand the story, and I wrote 11 more episodes that continue the story of this woman who's coming out of this frozen state and trying to adjust to 2045, and her family who is all grown up and changed. Her daughter now has a kid, and her husband is now much, much older and wants to make love to her, and she's not quite ready because he looks like his father to her. So there's all kinds of drama that happens in this show, and we were lucky enough to have Steve Sklar turn us on to the Ozone. And so we used the prototype of the Ozone. It was the first one, right? The first Ozone?
Yeah, one of the first ones.
One of the first ones, and we shot in stereo the next 12 episodes. And we're now in post on them because, it was the first time it's been used, and since then they've developed a lot of ways to make it much easier, but we were making mistakes because nobody had shot with it before, and you're not supposed to get the actors too close to the camera, which we did, because they were coming up to the wheelchair and talking to her, and so that, if you're close, you can stitch really nicely in the front, but the background has, stitch lines, and if you stitch the back and the front, So we're learning. We're kind of like figuring out the rules as we go. And so now we hope to launch these 12 episodes in January. We're not sure where. We're looking for a distribution outlet.
How does the narrative unfold? So as the viewer, you are the main character.
Right.
And then you need someone to go. Is there different tributaries they can take, or is it?
Well, in this series, the first 12 there aren't, but I'm writing 12 more now that are going to use more interesting technology, like I'm hoping to do the volumetric capture for the next 12 and get her out of the wheelchair, walking around. It's interesting because when you're wearing this thing, has anyone seen Defrost here? Okay, one person in the back. Okay, when you're wearing it, and the actors come up and start talking to you and having eye contact with you, it feels like they're really there. And a lot of people get emotionally involved. I mean, Bryan Singer came out of it with tears in his eyes, from the emotional experience of being this woman for 5 minutes. And we've had many older people who are used to when someone talks to you, you talk back. So they're in the thing, and the people are saying, how are you feeling? And they're saying, I'm feeling fine, because they're thinking that they're really there with these people. So it's really been an extraordinary experience seeing how people react to eye contact.
And one last question, like, after doing this, like, what percentage of this would you, like, do differently? You know, and, like, you did it and you're like, oh, I wish I should have done this. I mean...
Well, you know, I think what we did caused a lot of problems for us, but I think I wouldn't do it any differently. We're gonna plow through and make it work, because I think you need to have people close and looking right in your face. So yeah, I would do that. But you know, something Tim said about it being an isolated experience. We did an experiment at the Directors Guild in July where we have this thing called Digital Day. We try experiments, and we put like 30 people in the headsets, and we synced them all up so that they're all seeing the same picture, the same video at the same time. And they didn't wear earphones. We had the sound come to the speakers of the theater, so they could hear each other. If it was a comedy, they could hear each other laughing, or if it was a horror movie, they could hear each other screaming. So it's a combination of this isolated experience and a theater experience. And I think that might be some way for the future for this not to be so isolated.
So, I mean, Timothy, we talked a little bit like what the high-end creative space looks like. Can you kind of expand on that, where you think this is going?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's early days, and it's also not in some ways, right? So we're seeing it. You know, we've done at Technicolor about 30 projects so far in VR, which is kind of staggering considering it's really been around for about 18 months as a medium for storytelling. But it builds on some of the other things that we know and love to do. And so when we kind of bring these creative people in and say, hey, you know, here's VR, here's your first experience, it kind of is mind-blowing. And they kind of go away for a couple of days and think about, I've got a script, or I've got a thing that I want to work on, and this is actually the right medium to do it in. And it's usually, when they come back to us, it's kind of an amazing event, because then there's this whole bunch of ideation. So, you know, we've started, last year we were lucky enough to start working with a company called The Mill, which is part of the family now, and that's a great group of creative people, based worldwide. They're English, but fantastic people. Sound like that. Forget that. So they are great people, and they're really great at kind of understanding and getting underneath things. And so for us, you know, we started working with them on this thing called a project called Help, which I'm not sure if you guys. It's a Google ATAP project. I'm not sure if anyone's seen it in the audience. Great, same guy. Okay.
Who's that guy?
He's skewing the. Okay. Anyway. So that's a project where Google came to us and said, we want to do something in VR. It's really actually more of an iPad kind of tablet, Android, etc., tablet-based experience. It's a very short clip. The challenges in building that and bringing all things together as part of that were mind-blowing, because no one had really worked on these things before. So, you know, we started doing these render shots of, you know, in live capture, and we had to throw all that work away, because we weren't happy with how it looked when it was being stitched. And then when you kind of go from one screen to 6, it's not 4 and it's not 360, it's also the floor, it's the ceiling, it's every element of that, and it's round. And making that look great, and then understanding the storytelling problem, which is you're being chased by a monster, but some people look at the monster as they're running away backwards from it. Like, is it near me, is it coming at me? And so there's a lot of resolution required there, and that's all in CG. Some people freak out and run straight at the door, or the wall, or whatever else. That has to be stitched the same way, and has to be rendered in the same resolution. There's no storytelling, hey, look over here, you know, scary thing, or loud noise, or bright light. Yeah, that's all there. There's police cars, there's choppers. This thing grows from a small egg to like a huge T-Rex type lizard as it's eating subway cars. It's really cool. You need to see it. But the point is, you know, we had to not only invent a bunch of tech underneath that, including, you know, a camera that could capture 4-way, and then make that a 6-cubed kind of object. I'm not very technical, I'm sorry, but I'm sure I'm blowing this. But and then stitching and holding that all together in, you know, some significant amount of terabytes. I have the numbers here, but they're mind-blowing. And rendering farms, all kinds of stuff that we had to set up. It's a lot of work. And so we did all that, and that's kind of why we're looking at this. I'll get to the tech in a second, but, you know, when we look at quality, we're saying, hey, you know, there's actually a lot of work that goes underneath that you have to then hide. Because quality has to be about not just the willing suspension of disbelief, the unconscious suspension, that I'm not even aware I'm kind of fooling myself here. I'm just into this. It feels real. And that's, when you get there, it's really cool. Yeah. So.
Can I ask them a question? On the panel? Can the panel ask questions?
Yes.
So in terms of like high-end also, I kind of think, what I think of high-end is we're kind of getting away from the mobile phone cardboard kind of thing and getting into premium content experiences,
Yeah.
location-based entertainment, theme park type environments where, you know, when you're paying a premium, that content needs to be the best it can, right? So what do you think about, you know, cell phone versus when someone's going to pay for an experience, where might that be and how might that get out in the market?
Yeah, I think a lot of our clients are not studios. I mean, obviously we love our studio clients and we do a lot of work with them. But a lot of our clients are actually brands and advertisers. And they're companies who say, look, you know, we actually want to get this out there in a meaningfully different way. Mm-hmm. And the way to differentiate the product is to differentiate the medium, so we're going to go on a VR pitch or we're going to do an AR pitch. And we've done lots of that work as well. And those are, you know, typically those are in some form of LBE. They're usually kind of in a store, mm-hmm. a mall, and they can often be on a cardboard device, or they can be in a small enclosure like with a Vive. You know, and there's a lot of really cool stuff happening in games and theme parks. And the Void's doing a ton of stuff. And there's lots of really cool hybrid environments in gaming that are coming up that I think are going to be spectacular. I don't think it's just going to be this, you know, watch a movie doing this and being excited. I think it's going to be watch a new form of entertainment. It's much more interactive. Be just completely compelled by it. Mm-hmm. I think the 2-hour movie viewing experience is probably, not great, but I think a lot of the things we're going to be seeing for creators are going to be amazing, and they're going to be a new medium. So we're very animated on this one.
To sort of follow on with that, Randal, where are you distributing your content? I think everybody's struggling with, reaching a larger audience versus having a higher quality experience, right?
Well, we're looking into downloadable, sort of like Netflix, where you have all the episodes up there and you can click on it and look at them one at a time, or binge watch, although they're only 5 minutes each. And we don't know where we're going to distribute yet. We're in negotiations with China at the moment, with a company that wants to buy the rights for China for cell phones. And then we're going to look into all the possibilities for monetization in the rest of the world. But right now we're just trying to finish it. And then if you build it, they will come, is our philosophy. So we don't know who's going to do it.
But I'd love anyone to both follow on and we know what they think the next experience is in it's like what 2017 looks like for VR, 2018. And also, Bo, some of the stuff you talked about as far as what needs to happen for those experiences to unfold.
Well, I just wanted to say, I think the high-end experience is really within our reach today. That's what's really exciting a lot of technology people, is that a lot of us got into technology because we wanted to make better video games. And today with these goggles with the stereoscopic view, you really can get there. Now, it's also true that a low-res experience can be very compelling, right? My kids are immersed in Minecraft as the best example. And even a good book, the resolution of that doesn't really matter. But because, like I say, it's within reach to hit these upper limits, I'm just going to throw up some numbers. This is the theoretical upper bound of what the human visual system can consume in the digital equivalent of it. And I won't go through all the numbers, but I'll point out a couple. So if you just think about the head staying still and being able to move your eyes, gaze around about 150-degree horizontal and 90-degree vertical field of view, the resolution that your fovea can ingest is equivalent to about between 400 and 500 megapixels. That's per eye, per frame. And now, if there's debates about what's the max frame rate that the human visual system can consume, but I'm going to pick 120 as pretty high end. Right now, gamers expect 90, and so 120 is just a step up beyond that. Some people argue though it should go even higher. But anyway, if you think 120 frames per second per eye. That's 3.7 terabits per second for both eyes. That's the max limit. That's not what's necessary for a compelling experience, but this is what we can imagine the technology needing to meet in 5 years. Not next year.
Now, would you say?
Well, so today we can get a really compelling VR experience, 360 video using cube representation. You could squeeze it down to like 20 megabits per second, but to have high end, like 100 megabits per second. And let me say, most homes have a connection of about 10 megabits per second. And the U.S. government, I've forgotten which agency, but one of the agencies does this projection of what the infrastructure is going to need to be in 5 years. Their projection of infrastructure need is only 20 megabits per second to the home. And that's not going to be adequate for streaming VR content, because we need 100 megabits per second for the high end.
Yeah.
And that's for today's resolution at 4K per eye. If we look at future resolution requirements, if we really want to get complete digital immersion, we're going to need things that approach these numbers. And I'll just point you here that if we can, this is the raw data rate, but you could compress it at really high compression ratio of 300 to 1, get it down to 12 gigabits per second, and sometimes lower than that too.
So compression is really the key to the future of this business?
Yeah, but we have good compression technologies, and it's going to iterate. Really, the compression isn't as important as the data representations. Like, is it cubic? Is it spherical? Is it volumetric? All of those things matter more than the actual compression.
Yeah, I mean, to give you an idea on some of the stuff we didn't help, which is, I think, kind of a nice representation. It's about 4 minutes long. So it's 200 terabytes of total compressed storage. There are 15 million rendered frames that we went through to make it, which is astounding. There was 500,000 hours of usage of our farm, which is kind of the back lot where we do all the digital production. We ran 20,000 hours of simulation on our models to do all this work. And the final thing is, it's 10,000 frames. It's a single piece because there's no edit, there's no cut. It just runs. But because it's cubic, it's actually 60,000 frames. So you get this, when you start to think about, okay, taking the single screen and blowing it out, that is, exponentially more difficult. So the overall effort was 80 people for 13 months to complete across the planet. Yeah. So it's a lot of work, obviously, to do that. Yeah, it's 4 minutes.
Well, so the experience has to be dramatically different enough for people to pay for all this extra production.
Yeah, and I'd say, look, we learn a lot, right? That was the first of its kind in the industry. So when we did that, it was like, okay, let's make this as good as we possibly can. I wouldn't say money was not the object, but frankly, we learned this as kind of a big experience in learning and learning by doing. There's not like you can go to school. You can't go to VR school, right? So you have to actually do it and learn it. And so that was a really big part of it. It was actually getting our people involved in it early so they could actually become experts.
Speaking of VR schools, there's a guy named Savat Gurley who's from CryEngine. He's funding 40 VR schools around the world in film schools.
Yeah.
And what I found is that, there's the students who are learning this are just as much experts as the people in our field because nobody's done this before. So it's an even playing field for students and professionals.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think Digital Hollywood, we're the entertainment folks in this industry, and it's interesting how a lot of the work that this group is doing when it comes to VR is outside this industry, right? Automobile manufacturers can build great cars, but they don't really know how to tell a story. And when you're immersed in a sales scenario for VR, for a car, I think the Hollywood studios are the ones that can help produce content for those companies. So it's interesting how this market can expand potentially out of this market. And I do think that's the first step to revenue here, possibly outside of M&E. It's into other markets such as manufacturing where VR is starting to take off, but they don't really know how to tell the story. Agree, maybe?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the storytelling actually, because I wanted to share some thoughts how this industry evolved the last 2 years. Even I remember when I started 2 years ago in the VR industry, I was told, do not move the camera, everything has to be all in one take. And we have done a lot of experiments with the creative industry, with Randal and others, and bigger Hollywood studios as well, about how to change that and experiment with, for example, the point of view storytelling, what Randal done in Bifrost, but we also use that in Argos, our other piece. Basically, you become somebody else. The Argos piece is reliving somebody else's memory who got murdered in a crime, and you become that person. You slide down, you get violence against you, you get love against you, so you become that person, and that's very unique with VR. But I also wanted to mention about the storytelling, the guidance, how important it is to guide the audience, the viewer, in that 360 space. So the viewer can look anywhere. They can look behind or, all around them. But it is very important for the director and the writer to think about the guidance. So you make sure they look at the right place at the right time, so you can actually deliver a story. So we use, for example, jibs and cable cams for the music video, where we transported the viewer from a boys' room to a girls' room across an alley. So we stopped over the street where there were other people doing other things, so they could still have a freedom to look around in 360, but they're sort of guided to different spaces by the different camera reading technology.
Right. I think also, and I've heard this in a few sessions yesterday as well, audio. Everybody VR, like, what's the graphics need? What do I do? And how many pixels can I throw at the screen? Audio is the cue to tell the story.
Absolutely.
Right? Because from a directorial standpoint, if you want somebody to look over the shoulder because that's where the content, you got to draw them there. And I think sometimes when we start doing VR production, maybe we don't think about audio like on day one, but we should, because that's sort of it can't get completed unless the audio is part of that experience.
Yeah, and we focus a lot on audio at Nokia as well. So spatial audio, we try to make sure every piece we create have a spatial sound mix. And it's very important, I agree. That's another tool to guide the user.
Yeah, directing VR 360 narrative content is very much like directing a play, where the audience can look anywhere they want. So you use light and sound and direction, like if everyone looks that way, you want to see what are they looking at, stuff that you use as a play director.
Yeah. One of the things we're going to, I just want to mention this, the techniques that you kick it off. I mean, we really believe this is the time for the industry to come together. And we believe very strongly in content creation, consumption, distribution, aligning here around VR. One of the things we're going to do to help that is we're opening up a center in Culver City to try to get the best creative people, the best technologists, the best distribution technology into that center. It's essentially, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to structure it. It's going to be a non-profit that we set up. It's not aimed at making money. Obviously, it is aimed to float the VR boat for all of us.
Siri didn't get that.
When I said non-profit, I think so. Yeah. So, but that's the idea. I mean, the idea is really for us to try to work through and get
best practices established, but really to build a place for high-end creative and high-end technology in VR to be assembled and to be developed. And that's one of the things that we recently we'll have some further follow-up announcements when we're ready, but very soon in Culver City.
So, Pokemon Go, really great example of location-based technology, kind of introduced people for making AR a household word. Everyone's paying attention to it. My kids are obsessed with it. I'm sure if you have children, they are. If you have adults, they're probably obsessed with it too. But people, in the AR space are saying that it's really not what AR is about. Like, what do you got? Anyone want to take this question? Like, where do you think killer apps are for AR, maybe in entertainment?
I love to talk, so I'll start first, I suppose.
Okay.
So I think in AR, first I'll do a little Nvidia story. So GPU, right, whether it's a high-end graphics thing that does visual effects or high-end VR, take that down to a system on a chip or a SoC. We also have products like that. So we work with like Aether Labs, GameFace Labs, and other folks in that industry. I think that AR might be a little bit more relevant in like maintenance and somebody in the field trying to do a repair of an engine. I think that's happening today. I think medical could be another area. I definitely think that the enterprise will be a larger AR space, and then you'll have the anomaly like Pokemon Go that brings it back into the consumer world. And I think that'll kind of ebb and flow. But I think the enterprise, like I said, manufacturing, you could be on a shoot, and you could be doing AR with a tablet of characters that aren't there yet, but you want them to be there. So you're kind of seeing what the film might look like. So I think there's areas in entertainment in many industries, but I think it'll be enterprise. And I do, and Nvidia does feel that AR will be growing and will eventually be bigger than what the VR market is.
Let me pick up from there too, because I've wrestled with this too. I'm a Pokemon Go fan, I love it, but it's not what I thought AR was going to be, which was more about aligning digital information onto physical objects in the real world. So I think the enterprise applications are clearly valuable to those people because they need their hands to be free and they need digital information to help them complete whatever task, whether it's medical or some technical installation or repair. So that's a clear value proposition there. Now in the consumer space, I've wrestled. So there's mixed reality games. That's pretty compelling. Is it compelling enough to spend $300 to $500 on a headset and wear it? Not sure, but there's another category in consumer, which is really similar to the enterprise, which is things like how-to videos. Now, I'm a big do-it-yourselfer, not everybody is, but a lot of people are, and YouTube is just chock full of all these how-to videos, and I just love it, right? Well, if you think about putting those into augmented reality, giving people a capture system that lets them align digital information with their how-to instructions, that's really powerful. And then you've got an opportunity for user-generated content like YouTube, and that's when the media is going to explode, when the users are uploading tons of small little pieces of content that people can use. And I just want to give one example. I was at Stanford. They had a class on making apps for augmented reality. They had a bunch of HoloLenses that Microsoft donated to them. And the best one I saw was really cool, was a piano tutorial. And it was great because you had the HoloLens on and you could see the keys, the physical keys, a real piano, not a digital one, and it was showing little scrolling bars to show you which key to press, and it was timed, kind of like Guitar Player, but on a piano, and it was really powerful. I could easily imagine using that to learn how to play a physical piano.
That's amazing.
Sometimes if you've ever gotten anything from Nokia and you have slot A, slot B.
Yeah,
perfect.
exactly. Yeah, right.
Not Nokia, I meant, what?
IKEA.
That would be great.
Same country.
Hey, put together your IKEA furniture. Here, I'd like to try surgery as well.
Brain surgery.
But anybody questions from the audience? Anybody? Yes.
With the Ozo, so what you were saying about audio, about like people moving their heads and it having to follow like the space, how is the Ozo like being able to, I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but if I move my head,
Yeah, I understand.
because
what
right
you're
now it's
saying.
like, it's very rudimentary, like it's only
Yeah.
at these 4 points.
So you will hear, if you turn your head and the sound is coming from a certain direction, you will hear that sound from the same direction. So when you turn your head, you will still hear the sound where it's coming from.
And they're doing that a little bit, but I noticed that there's only really 4 points. There's front, back, side to side. Is the Ozo able to kind of get at 45-degree angles, or is that still? And
So it
how do
also
we implement that
captures
with the
eight sources of audio. So it really depends on the post mix, the spatial audio mix, how you use those 8 channels. And you can render an ambisonic or any other format that you heard maybe on one of the demos.
And is there a way to implement that with like all the different kinds of goggles and stuff like that that you can wear?
Well, it's really depends on the platform, what the platform is capable of playing back. Some platforms today still have limitations of stereo or mono audio only, so very few of them support the spatial audio. So it's really not on the app or the Google. It's more on the app and the platform how it's capable of playing it back.
Samsung VR has that spatial audio. They work really well.
Right. We have tools that sort of mimic what we do in light fields and path tracing, how light bounces off glass and cars and things like that. So we're taking that also to audio, because the way that I sound in this room with these walls will be different than the way I sound outside in the open area. So the technology, you know, again, what we do, tool set, has to go into some type of engine of sorts to be put together with Ozo and technologies like that. So some way, somehow, people actually need to put it together before the final experience gets put out.
Two questions. First of all, I want to make sure I understood that a passive view of live action is at a higher quality because you're not moving, you're not doing anything, just sitting there with the headset on, and so you should be able to eventually have a much better quality of that experience, and you will get it's an active view rather than moving. Did I get that correct?
So I think the question is the post view of live action being rendered in such high definition and VR applications will be a much richer experience.
No, your screen showed, you're saying if you're not moving.
You're talking about this volumetric video?
No, it was your one.
Sorry. Yeah, I'll go back to that. Yeah, this one.
Right. No, you seem to be saying that if it is not, if it's a passive, if it's not an active participation in it, that you're able to absorb more information and at a higher quality.
You know, all I'm trying to show, I was just trying to do a calculation to find out what my lab's maximum compression requirements will ever be, you know, so I'm taking I'm just making a simplification of imagining somebody not moving their head as a first step, and that's where I come up with this. But then if you add head and body rotation, then the horizontal field of view becomes 360, and the vertical field of view, I'm imagining, is 180, just up to down, right? So that's when you hit this number. This is compressed.
You're not seeing what you're pointing to.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you know what? I forget this mode of PowerPoint throws me off. Where's that pointer thingy?
But I think what you're saying is, I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? Because you're going to have to stitch and render that anyway.
Yeah.
You're going to have to show all that, the cube, regardless.
So I guess my point is, if you're showing a live a concert,
Yeah.
okay, where somebody is in a set position watching,
Right.
should that be a better, higher quality technical experience
Well,
than if you're moving around and you're trying to do
It'll be
Okay.
less work.
Right, it will be higher quality probably because one of the ways we're going to compress the cube is the parts you're not looking at, we're going to send in low resolution, really low resolution. So what you're looking at would be high resolution. You turn your head though, it'll be low resolution for an instant, and then it'll snap to a higher resolution, right? So it's adaptive resolution.
The second question was, everybody was real excited about VR for live action sports.
Right.
And thus far, as best as I can tell, it's been a huge disappointment. And I don't attribute that to the shortcomings of VR. I attribute it to what Ms. Anderson said about people in sports not understanding how to use VR properly and being afraid of actually having motion on the camera and doing cuts and things of that nature. What is your take on what should be one of the largest immersive experiences in the world for sports around the globe? And other than very contained like cage fighting and boxing and wrestling, it's very hard for people to grasp how to do production.
Let me say one thing about it. I was talking to somebody at Fox about that question, and his point was, he said, look, the producers are telling a story. Sports is also about telling a story, but they're telling it's kind of, I equate it to like a soap opera. You know, you got to know the backstory of the players, all their stats, or the rivalry between the teams and all that, and the producers are exploiting those story elements when they select what view to present you, okay? So most consumers, they believe, and I don't really know, but most consumers really want that. They want to be told a story. Now the thing is, even if that's true, I think there are multiple stories to be told. So right now we've got one network who's producing one storyline, but in the future, if you expose these camera feeds, then you could have multiple people telling different stories. You know, maybe that's only 2% of the viewership wants to tell a story, but even at that level, and I use 2% because that's about the percentage of the population that uploads to YouTube or posts on Facebook, you know. So even at 2%, that's a whole bunch of new storylines that could be told and broadcast.
And it's different camera positioning than traditional television. And, you know, you don't want to just be going, you know, you don't want to be at the 50-yard line and watching a football game. You kind of want to be all over. You want to be on the field, right? So I think the challenge still might be position, camera technology, and how do you get immersed in a traditional environment like football, so to speak.
So I like to say that also it's like a human, you know, it doesn't zoom, so that's one of the big differences between the broadcast cameras and VR cameras, not just also...
But it can zoom. You said if you use cable cam, if you use jib, there's absolutely no reason.
Right, you move it closer. That's what I'm saying, it's like a human. If I want to see what's going on over there out in the corridor, I'm going closer to see it like a human. So you have to bring it closer on a jib or a Technicolor or, you know, on a cable camera, whatever, and you have to use multiple cameras like you do in traditional broadcast around the field as well.
If I can have one last comment. One last, I would think it would be much better if they incorporated what I would call a flying carpet mentality for a sports fan, which is as if they had a flying carpet and could go anywhere in the stadium at any one time to watch an event. That's where you want to be in VR. And I think it can be done with a little creativity.
You just have to have enough cameras to put it everywhere. A drone.
So with that, we are out of time. We would like to thank the audience for participating.
I don't. I forgot. I'm going to New York. Thank you. I'll ping you around. Yeah, it's nice to meet you.
Absolutely.
He works for me, yeah. Yeah, he's in my group. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Fantastic. All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't find out.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, good. I'll go to all the time. That's fantastic.
Sure, yeah, and if it's not with me, I can find the right people in Huawei. Are you wanting to? You're a media producer, content production company? Yeah, I have some connections to the consumer business group who does content partnerships, and beyond that, I'm not sure, but maybe I can help you find somebody.
I'm not talking about the relationships we have. I'm talking if we want to produce something, let's say some like immersive combined avatar and also live action type of project. If I don't know if we can work with your lab.
With my lab?
Yeah.
I'm interested, but probably not. So I've just set the expectations low, but I'd like to learn more always.
Okay, thanks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Randal, real pleasure to meet you. Yeah, I thought what was the name of the series? Because I defrost. I've got to see that. Defrost. I've got to see that. I think that sounds like the best idea for the 360 experience.
Well, you've got your cards out. I was a producer for CBS Sports for 20 years.
Oh, were you?
And I think they've got it wrong as can be.
Oh, dude.
And if you...
Fascinating. No, I don't know much about sports production, but I know there's some truth to that assumption that they have that it's a story.
Doing Chinese news, but I never thought about doing it as a VR series. And I wanted to do some way I could shoot people who way could be the sponsor of the VR content, so where they shot parallel. You have to shoot VR over the top of the. If we're doing a regular production, do you have to VR have to be the top of it, and everything is decompressed down for the show. I mean, is that the main? Like, if you're shooting a VR show, it's like a travel show around China.
You could do a hybrid. I think you could do a main, just conventional rectangular shot, and then have some VR elements within it or something.
How would it work best for you guys?
I don't know, because that's more. I'm not a content guy, so I really don't know. Is the honest truth. I mean, I could speculate that I'd be making I might be able to. I will float your name. You send me an email. You got my card. What is it? Money transfer? So you got my email. You send me an email with sort of a couple of bullets, and I'll forward it to who I think can help find the right person.
And are you guys sponsoring Huawei? Are they doing it?
Don't know. I assume yes, but I don't know.
But this will be in China for Chinese New Year.
Okay. All right. I look forward to it.
Hi there.
Hey, how you doing?
I do a volumetric capture.
Oh, you do? That's fantastic.
We're in a low number of cameras.
Where are you based?
We're in Venice, California here.
Oh,
very
that's
close by.
fantastic. How many cameras are you doing?
Well, to do 360, like 6 cameras.
Not bad.
Yeah. And,
You know, I met those guys who did the HoloLens. They claim they can do it now with 3 cameras. I'm
I can
not
work
setting
with,
that
No,
bar.
I can work with one.
I'm not setting that bar.
I can work with one camera, and we're very tolerant of dropouts and occlusions and things like that.
I definitely want to talk to you more.
And the other thing is we end up with a very well-ordered topology.
Do you ever come to Silicon Valley or anything?
It can be done.
Or could you send me some samples or something?
You can go look at my website.
I'll do that. I will do that. Yeah, I'd like to. I need sample content. I'd like to have a partner in this, so I'm just learning who's available. So that's good.
Well,
Great.
we're not doing photogrammetry.
What do you mean?
We're not doing photogrammetry, and we're not doing voxel cloud. Photogrammetry is where you're building up your basically from just an epipolar analysis of the surfaces.
You're not doing that?
We're not doing that. We're doing something slightly different. It's a lot. It could have a lot lower data rate and a lot of other things.
Okay, well, let's set up a meeting to learn more.
Okay.
Don't mind, send me an email and mention that I suggested it. I'm going to be traveling for the next 2 weeks, but in November.
Okay.
That's good. Thanks.
Talk to you later.
Nice to meet you. Hi, how are you, Kathy? Hi.
I'll just take your card and ask some questions.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
You want to
so
shoot
we're-
an email with questions?
Yeah,
Or-
so
oh,
we're,
that's fun.
I'm a CNN contributor, but I'm doing a project on living memorials. So, like, basically, you know, the veteran memorial wall. So what I wanted to do is...
You're always moving quickly.
And I wore my red shoes, and we're doing a real life sketch stand.
Oh my God.
And so it's kind of like VR but AR. So if people touch the names of the person and get very emotional, but if you can actually put your phone on it and the
Seeing that
person.
person alive, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so that's my
When's that coming out? Dying experience.
Oh, I have a example. Now we call it the human engine right now.
Yeah, that would be a good tool too.
And so I just got the authorization for me to like.
I did, and
Yeah, I'm still in.
it's a very LA situation.
Give you an example. I can't give you the whole thing.
Yeah, you can just take the. Go upstairs
maybe-
one flight.
Hi, my name is Jin,
Hi, Gene.
and I'm from Japan, and
Oh,
I
hi.
work for the
Super
biggest
ship.
Japanese telecommunication company. And right now we have a project to do the VR live streaming with Japanese professional baseball and football,
Oh.
and looking for the good compression technology. So, do you have any?
You can see the whole detail of her tattoo.
Oh, yeah, that is good.
And all the way. This is for a game.
Okay. That was a live capture, or she's
Yes.
a CG?
No, live capture.
She's very bright.
It's live. Yeah, because we have 130 cameras and light.
Oh, okay.
And this is a live person.
Amazing. Okay, can you send me a pointer to that and more, or whatever?
I can do that in January.
Okay.
But we can talk.
All right, thank you. Nice to meet you.
And the thing is there any opportunity for us to discuss about the compression technology that we can use for our project?
Yes. You're working for the telco?
Yeah, KDDI.
KDDI? Then
Yeah.
yes, definitely. We talked to KDDI.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, but I don't know with what level, et cetera, et cetera.
alright,
So we could talk more.
Yeah. You
I
guys-
have to check with the guy who went to the KDDI visit. I'll check with him
Alright.
to see what the status
Okay.
is. But we're talking to them already.
Great.
The
So-
telcos are a major customer, so we talk to them. Telco, sorry.
Oh, okay,
We
alright.
talk to them all the time.
Okay. So can I just send you an email
Yeah,
about
please
the
do.
thing? Okay, thank you very
Good
much.
to meet
Thanks.
There's a cliffable around.
talking
A
about
what?
telco.
The clay fairy evolution.
Oh, really?
Right
Oh,
here.
thanks for telling me.
I have a picture.
I need more points. Oh, fantastic.
So I'm in the Bay Area. We'll
Oh,
probably
cool.
hook you up.
You're on
there
Trimble
too.
Road. Yeah, we're
you're
close.
you're across from Nvidia, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We share a parking lot. We're
Drive by. We're doing some serious work in volumetric capture.
Really?
Believe it or not.
Yeah. Why would
And
Verizon?
we're also building a VR platform that influence connects. So I'm sure we can. Share
Well,
some
we
stories.
would love to help you guys achieve your
Who
vision.
did that HoloLens thing?
That was Microsoft.
That was the Microsoft
Research, yeah. And those guys spun out, and they have a company in the Bay Area. So
they
that's,
did?
yeah.
What's their name?
Perceptive.io.
Perceptive.io.
Because they want to be like a computer vision company. Not just holoportation, but that's one of their applications.
Okay, so I'll look them up, but I'll pick you up. You're going to be back in town within a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I'm traveling this weekend, half of next week, and then I'm in town. So,
All right.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you guys. You know, Verizon, anything we can do to connect with you guys, we'll do it.
All right,
thanks, Richard. Hi. Hey, good.
Thank you for speaking. Very interesting. I actually am working with Randal Software Systems. I'm in Boston, but we have an office here in Woodland Hills, so not too far. I just wanted to say hi. We actually do IP licensing. If you have any like intellectual property, which I'm sure you all have a lot of, we kind of take care of that, rights management, and then the accounting side, like payroll, piece of receipt world.
Okay.
May not be like your necessary.
This isn't real TV.
No, not real network.
Real network. Sorry.
No, two different. So we're Real, kind of like based off Real, Camino Real.
You should put the accent.
I know, right? Like that's every time I'm on the phone with someone, I'm like, it's spelled real, but it's pronounced Real. But yeah, you know, I don't know if it's your business, but maybe. But yeah, point me in the right direction.
All right.
But thank you. It's really interesting to hear. And VR is always putting a new opportunity into IP and in our business as well. So,
great.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're working with
Thanks for the introduction.
Yeah.
I feel funny. I feel like I should walk down there.
No, you're on your podium.
I just got stuck here. I know I'm going to have to make room.
Lovely meeting you.
Yeah, good to meet you too. Best wishes. Okay.
Spence,
how are you?
Good to meet you. Great on the data slides. It was great to see that. I'm putting a VR event together with the Television Academy next month.
Okay.
You can put me in touch with the right person.
Yeah, what are you looking for? Speakers or
speakers and sponsors.
Sponsors, I can't do. So.
No, I know. But if you could forward me to whoever might,
try.
entertain the conversation.
I'm so sorry.
Oh,
we can continue.
Okay, I'm coming down. I'm coming down.
I know. When are these going digital?
I know.